Hello everybody, this is Martin Shillington and you're listening to the Google for Business podcast. In this edition, I interview Eric Enge from Stone Temple Consulting and we have a good chat about SEO and really looking at the future of SEO, knowing it ain't going to be like the past. A lot's changed in this space and things have increasingly gone social. But Eric's got a really grounded view on what works and what doesn't, and hopefully going to give you some hints and tips along the way. Good day and welcome, Eric Enge from Stone Temple Consulting. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Doing good. So doing great, doing good. All these little Americanisms that I've picked up along the way. So, search. You are a master of search. You wrote The Art of SEO.
I did.
And it's got a new edition. Is it a third edition?
Third edition.
It was just open. It was keeping a door open, wasn't it? Then it's the size of it. It was like propping something up. It's huge.
It is. It's almost 1,000 pages.
Yeah, and I guess
crazy.
You had to change a lot, quite a bit.
Well, the last edition came out in 2012, so some important things changed. A chapter that used to be called link building became the content marketing chapter.
Oh, yeah.
The social media chapter was completely rewritten. We added a chapter on Panda, Penguin, and penalties. The chapter on tools was pretty much completely rewritten.
Yeah.
The chapter on the future of search, which is the last chapter in the book, a really cool chapter, saw a lot of change. So there was a ton of different things that changed. I mean, the prior edition was, 700 some odd pages. So we added almost 300 pages to the book.
And that was just on Google Plus. Yay! There we go. Well, let's talk about you. Let's talk about you to start with, and social and search. Historically, you were very much search orientated, but you're super social now.
Yeah, well. The
well.
industry's evolving.
Yeah. Right.
And, quite frankly, talking about social media, I was a little slow getting engaged in social media, and that's too bad. It's kind of, I missed the early opportunity, quite frankly, but there's so much that was happening in search, and I was just busy. And I didn't pay enough attention to it. But you're right, I'm active in it now. And then if you look at our business here, we're certainly known for being a search engine optimization company, but half our revenue comes from content marketing here. And we do content marketing for some of the world's largest brands. And I choose the word world deliberately, by the way, not just because, you're in the UK at the moment. Are you in Wales?
No, I'm actually in England. I stepped over the border for the podcast.
Yeah, that's because I saw that. It threw me for a loop there for a second. But in any case, some of the brands we work with are truly international and global, and we're doing content marketing for some of these people. Some of them we do content marketing for, and we don't do regular SEO.
Yeah.
So a lot has changed in the company, but there's a reason for that, and that is, we've always really been about helping people get, new customers from digital marketing, and social media, content marketing, these kinds of things can help with that.
Well, let's look at this. Let's unpack it for people. Let's start with search, and let's look at social and the relationship with, say, site as well, which I always look at those three. Content marketing, where does it fit in for you, and where does it fit in for clients? What do you mean by content marketing there?
So we'll give the sort of nuts and bolts definition to start. So content marketing is really about publishing high quality, non-commercial, non-promotional content designed to help or entertain users for the purpose of building your reputation and visibility. Okay?
Yep.
That's the way you think about it. If you do it the right way, by the way, it can also drive search or SEO for you. But even if SEO is your primary goal, to do it right, you should really be treating SEO like a secondary goal.
It's a consequence in a way. That's the thing.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly the right way to think about it, right? And because otherwise you'll do things like traditional, um, many SEO people did over the years, which can get your site in trouble and looks like you're just busy trying to game the system
Yeah.
rather than trying to add value to the ecosystem out there. And that's the key thing. Today you really have to be thinking about the whole ecosystem.
Well, let's talk about that. So when you say the whole ecosystem, do you mean the Google ecosystem, or do you mean across all the social channels as well? What is the ecosystem to you?
To me, it's like I'm going to go even broader on you. Okay, so I mean, obviously, we live on a planet. It's called Earth. It's a global community, and then within that, there's a lot of other communities, and I mean people right now. So there's the community of all people interested in, I don't know, I'll pick an example, environmental friendliness, right? Being environmentally friendly. So there's experts, there's people who are just interested readers, there's students, there's people who buy related products. And you can refer to all of that as a community or an ecosystem. And then these people engage in different ways. Some of them look for blog posts to read with really interesting points about being environmentally friendly. Some of them join a community on a social media site, maybe on LinkedIn or Facebook or Google Plus, right? These different places. But that collection of people represents an ecosystem, and they go wherever they go.
Yeah.
Right? And if you want to be a successful brand going forward, even if you're a small business, you still have the same challenge. You have to be thinking about your ecosystem, right? So for somebody who wants to be a national or an international brand, you think bigger. And if you're a small business, you might be thinking just, the city or the province, or here in the United States, the state you're in. And that might be your ecosystem. But you're working that whole community, and the way you engage with that community ultimately is going to determine your success.
And this is, Lynette Young put it really well. It's about people, not platforms, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you're saying about the community, it's who do you serve? Where are they? Where are they based? So in terms of how does that relate to search then for you in your map?
Yeah. In terms of how that relates to search, and we started with content marketing, so I'm going to I'll start there and then I'll work down to search. Is if I'm working the community really well, and I share a piece of content, then lots of other people are going to write about it, and probably give me links. So that kind of drives search right there, right? And then if I'm working the community or the ecosystem really well, then when I publish that great content, lots of people are going to share it in social media. And because you've created a place for yourself in that ecosystem, a lot of that happens without a ton of manual labor by you, right? You get to a point where just because you publish it, people will say, that guy Martin, he just published this great content. I'm gonna share it because Martin did this thing. That's kind of the mentality, and that's sharing it in social media. To get back to how this helps search, puts it in front of other people who might write about it. And you keep working that ecosystem, and gradually your role in the ecosystem grows. And hence, whenever you create new content or whatever, even the existing content on your site, gets shared more often, it gets written about more often, it gets linked to more often. And whatever conversations you want to have about search, we all know that links are still a big factor.
Well, let's talk about that. So link citations, people are pointing their site to your site and saying that check out this thing because it relates, and if it relates to the content they've put out as well, that's going to be aligned, let's say.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. We left out many years of context from that statement, but the point is, it's done in the right way.
Yeah.
So that then happens. And what can Google see? How does Google track that then? Has it got the spiders that crawl and notice these link backs to the sites and therefore start to judge, assess?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I mean, Google is consistently and constantly crawling the web, and this actually leads to another very important point, right? Google, in its crawling activity of the web, will notice the articles that people write about you and the links to your site. They'll certainly notice the social media activity, although, as you know, I don't consider that a direct ranking factor. But they notice all these things. And the links in particular act like votes for your site, right? They help Google understand which site is most important on a given topic. So let's say, I write an article, as I did recently, on Google's rich answers in search. Well, I mean, there's a lot of people who've written about that, right? And the question then becomes, when Google has all these articles that are relevant to one topic, which one do they choose to rank first? And they use links as the system for making that decision. It's not the sole factor, by the way. I should be clear about that, but it's one of the biggest factors. We believe it's still the biggest factor in ranking. So they use that as an election system, but the key thing to realize is not all votes are created equal. And the simple example I always like to give is, if you have a page on your site where or maybe you have a small bookstore site, and Joe's bookstore implements a link to you, that's good. But let's say Amazon implements a link to you. As humans, we know which vote is more important, right? I mean, Amazon's vote of confidence for our piece of content on our site about some book or something like that means a hell of a lot more than the link from Joe's bookstore. And so this is the next major insight into the world of links is, unlike a political election, votes are not created equal. And in fact, it's quite likely or quite common that one link, in the right context, can literally be worth 10 million times more.
So this is the exponential page rank curve.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm just simplifying it.
Yeah. And you still think that is one filter to have, is which sites. So let's go into this. So you and I have known each other for a couple of years. We're part of a community. We know lots of people. We would naturally link to each other, refer to each other, because you're in my social stream. I see the content, you engage, you ping me an email, say how I've got your study coming out, and I will then do whatever I will do with that. That is the natural process that us lot have got to, because the relationships are good, and we kind of just do that because we want to tell other people about the content. We want to connect the dots between what we're writing and what other. We've kind of done what other businesses need to do. We're ahead of them, aren't we? You know what I mean? It's kind of like, this is just a natural process. So one of the things is, a lot of businesses, they've got to put somebody forward. Somebody's got to write. Or several people, isn't it? It's not just a case of put the content up there.
Right.
And that's a big shift in psychology for people, I think.
Yeah, there's layers in what you were just saying there, Martin. But the first part, it gets back to the ecosystem, right? Working the ecosystem doesn't mean manipulating the ecosystem. It means being a contributing part of it.
Yeah.
So, the reason why I share things from you is because I think it's valuable to the audience I have for people to see. And the reason why presumably you share things from me is the same, right? It's you get to a point where you see, here's the insight, right? It's like, create a situation where somebody else sharing your content is beneficial to the person sharing the content.
Yeah.
That's thinking about the ecosystem.
Yeah.
right?
It's the network in that way, isn't it? Looking at, I mean, I like the term ecosystem, but it's almost the difference between community and network. Network goes beyond. It's just where the content flows. It's the reach. And we have aligned networks. We're part of the same, we've built these networks out. But the community's tighter, isn't it? We may not know, 90% of the people in the network as the content flows. So let's go back then to that the point about having someone, because you started blog. Not only do you write, obviously, and you write well, but you start to do a lot more video, because it's not just about written content. It's about video. It's about infographics. It's about podcasts. It's about all of that sort of stuff, which is content. I mean, what's rising to the top for people? What are people finding easy? What approaches are you using to help clients to get some content out there?
Yeah, it's first of all, what's worked really well for us is data-driven studies.
Yeah.
But when you broaden that to what we do for clients, the way you asked the question, surveys work really well.
Oh yeah.
And then, in fact, I want to bring in a data point. There was a study published by Moz and BuzzSumo, which did some research on the overlap between shared content and content getting links.
Yeah.
Here's the fascinating thing, right? What they showed is that there's content that gets shared a lot. There's content that gets a lot of links. Okay? There's very little content that both is shared a lot and gets lots of links.
Yeah.
So, and this gets back to the psychology of what happens in social media. A lot of sharing in social media is fairly brainless. Very little thought or effort put into it. There is a sweet spot for the kind of content that gets both. And what they found is three things. Data-driven research, opinion-forming journalism, okay? But I'm talking about thought-provoking, deep pieces. Yeah. And those are the two major categories, but then they made an additional observation, is that the content that got both tended to be long-form content. And by long-form content, I mean more than 3,000 words. Now, they looked at 1 million documents. It was a large-scale study. So it was pretty fascinating to see. So, it kind of gets back to this notion that the garden variety content that you're putting out there, just stop.
Yeah, and you're talking average now, isn't it? Or below average. It's
no point in it.
Yeah, it's just not good enough.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're far better off to write one kick-ass piece a month than you are to pump out, several pieces a week that are a few hundred words and express some quick thought.
If you're looking for search. And that's one of the key things is for social point of view, sometimes it's useful just to give a little idea and a quick update on things and so on. I think there's a different way. But from search point of view, I agree totally. And I know in my experience, it's been the authoritative pieces that have just sat there and generated hundreds of thousands of visits over years. And it was a heck of a lot of work to get those pieces done. So I'm with you on all of this and this approach. How does that sit with the clients though? Do they get that now?
It's a journey.
Yeah. But we can laugh about that. But it's a journey for the whole lot of it, because it is a psychological change, isn't it? Because you've got to put yourself out there.
That's right. It is. You're absolutely right. It is a psychological change. They are so used to, they're large brains. They have a lot of. They have decades of momentum. Momentum from well before, we worried about a thing called the internet, and that psychology was completely different. They would broadcast their messaging out there, and they would get sort of through repetition things programmed into people's brains, and kind of the deal at the end of the day was, okay, if I've got a large brand, and I prove that by doing all this advertising, get my messaging in front of me, I've created an asset that that I don't want to lose. So a consumer might have some level of trust in that large brand because while it would be somewhat difficult to damage the brand if they started doing the wrong things, then they would hurt this critical asset they've developed. And that was kind of the way the trade worked 3 decades ago, right? But the current environment is fundamentally different. The current environment is much sharper. I mean, who knows what's going to happen to Volkswagen? With this whole thing with the diesel and the fact that they wrote software to fool the detection things where they were detecting the output of the when they're doing smog testing on vehicles. I mean, who knows what's going to happen to that company? It's fast today. The old days, losing the benefit of having a huge brand was it would take a lot, right? You did have something to protect. You had to be careful about it. There was some assurance to the consumer and it's this large brand. But today, you can lose the value of a brand like that. You can just turn very quickly because there are so many ways for you to get exposed. And any consumer can, in a heartbeat, go public with it and get the word out. Any consumer, right? And it spreads like wildfire.
Well, let's talk about reputation management and search then. I mean, do you find that people are keen to, and let's talk old-fashioned, own the first page? And we know it's a bit different with personalization and devices and so on. But, I mean, do you find that people are coming to you and saying, we want to make sure that we're getting the top results and that the first couple of pages is our site and not having our competitors or whatever? Is that now, is that something that's still happening, important?
So it does. Let's think about the difference between a normal SEO activity and a reputation management activity because it's worth illustrating.
Yeah.
Let's say you want to rank for some search phrase, right? I don't know, used cars. I'm using that because we don't have any car sites currently as a client. And so you're trying to rank for that phrase in the top results. And your task there, you're thinking about getting your page to the number one position. In reputation management, let's say you have a brand name, right? Volkswagen, for example, say, or some other car company. I don't want to necessarily just pick on Volkswagen all day long here. Ford Motor Company. And now you're thinking about, well, if I don't want people who are saying nasty things about me to show up in the first page of results, rather than trying to get one listing to the top of the results for one keyword, I'm trying to get all the listings or many of the listings on the page, right? And that's a pretty different task. And there's certain ways you go about that. I mean, one thing you do is, of course, your core website, unless you've done something really bad, is going to rank number one with little effort. But now, what are you going to do to make sure you get the second, third, fourth, fifth spots and so forth? Because Google is only going to show so many URLs from your domain.
Yeah. So you've got to be looking at guest blogging. You've got to be looking at maybe YouTube videos. We're still looking at those being ranking and other sources. Social media as well. Your social media sites.
Media profiles. You can get those.
Yeah.
Okay. But then it's like if somebody, some major media site has written a positive article about you, then you start linking to that and you start promoting that and trying to drive that up in the rankings over the other media site who might have written a negative article about you, right? So it's a pretty different game, and it's actually far more work than people think. And my advice is because trying to control all 10 results is today nearly impossible.
Yeah.
And far better to do an effective promotion job and make sure you control the first 5 or so, and any negative stuff is below the fold.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, so let's talk a little about site. Talk a little about, I like AdWords. Talk a little bit about AdWords, about remarketing and things like that. So we're driving through search, we're getting great search results, people come through to the site. How are people doing with conversion? How are they doing with getting the outcomes that they want? That's the first part. And then the second part is, are people doing AdWords? Are you finding that that's an integral part of it, or they in silos? Because I've heard a lot of people say that, the SEO department still separate to the socials, still separate to, the marketing. I just wondered your perspective from a big brand point of view.
Yeah. So I think there were about 3 or 4 questions.
There were.
But
you can hold them all, yeah?
Yeah. So first of all, the paid search effort is nearly always separate from the SEO effort. Yeah. There are some correlations interesting to talk about between paid search and AdWords. Paid word, can't get it out of my mouth, Martin. Between paid search and SEO. There are some interesting areas to talk about, but it's fairly minimal. But people are still clicking on ads. I mean, look, there's people who know they want to buy.
Yeah.
They actually prefer to click on the ads.
Yeah.
If you're in a buying mode, you don't want to go to a page that shows up in the organic results, because that might be a page that has an article describing how you make a choice. No, I already know what I want to buy.
So, Eric, in terms of search, we've got paid listings, which we've got AdWords on Google, and we've got the organic search results. What's your view on the different uses for those?
So, when users come to a search result, and they've searched on something, they get a search result. First of all, the great majority of users recognize the difference between ads and organic search results. It's pretty clear to them. I mean, there are obviously exceptions, but it's not unclear to most of them. And so when someone clicks an organic search result, you want to design the page they land on in one manner, which is meant to address what's probably a broad array of needs. So if they searched on oil filters and they arrive at your page on oil filters, you need to be aware that some of them want to buy, in addition to oil filters, oil. That's very useful when changing oil. And maybe a manual for their car to make sure they're getting the right oil filter. I mean, there's a number of things that they might want to buy. And they might just want to read reviews. So the mentality of someone coming through an organic search result tends to be a little different than the mentality of someone coming to a paid search ad. When someone lands on a paid search ad, generally speaking, they want to buy now.
Particularly if they put buy, and it's like buy oil filters. The clue is there, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's like they're ready to act. So, and the reason for talking about all this is, because people ask, do people really pay attention to the ads? And yes, there's searchers who will prefer clicking on the ads to the organic search results. They know they're doing it, and they're doing it because they want a direct and immediate experience. Don't give me the fluff. I'm in buying mode. Let me buy. Okay, not everybody buys, of course, and there's still conversion rate stuff that has to go on and all that. But that's the mentality, is they want more of a being sold to experience at that point.
And the pages there, you're going to adjust the landing page versus, for instance, the content-driven page. So
yep.
It's going to be different. Okay. Well, I'm just wondering, where do we go next? Let's go to the future.
Okay.
We like talking about the future. What do you think is going to happen next for search?
Rank brain.
Yeah, do you know what? I'm pretty sure this was DeepMind. This was the algorithm that was talked about last year. That was, and they called it the agent. Good rebranding by Google, I think, changing the name to something a
Yeah.
little bit friendlier, but it's still got brain in it. But yes, so yes, that was what 15% of searches or something now.
Well,
Coming.
actually, if you read it carefully, I think the way it came out is that about 15% of queries that Google gets every day are not queries they've ever seen before. But it turns out that the rank brain algorithm is running all the time. It just carries more weight in certain queries. And I'm gonna do something right now. I am going to pull up the quote that I got directly from a Google spokesperson because I queried somebody there. I'm only allowed to call them a Google spokesperson, but I'm going to find it. I hope. There it is. So I asked them, can you let me know if there's a near-term plan to expand the use of RankBrain? Because in the Bloomberg article, you indicate it's being used in a very large fraction of the search results. Is the intention to increase that very large fraction in the near term? So here's the quote, and you're getting it now live for the first time. Anyone's heard it. I haven't shared it with anyone yet. We don't have much more specific to share. Okay, that's not particularly clear. But, but we'll keep testing new machine learning models and approaches as we go. And when we get improvements in search quality, we'll carefully roll them out. And then the parenthetical part. This is the interesting piece. These sorts of signals usually aren't restricted to a specific portion of queries. It's more that the effects are noticeable more for some queries than others. So the insight is that RankBrain is not something that's allocated to a certain percentage of queries, as the Bloomberg article about this implied. It's being applied to everything. It just carries more weight in certain scenarios. And so if we go back to the Bloomberg article and now reconsider what was said there, my conclusion is that it has greater weight for those queries that have not been seen previously by Google. That RankBrain algorithm is being used in everything. And Google referred to it as the number 3 ranking signal. Now, I don't think we've explained yet to the listeners exactly what we're talking about. So
I'm not sure I know either.
So RankBrain is a machine learning algorithm. And it applies artificial intelligence to help with ranking. So what does that mean? What it means is that they have an algorithm which they have taught to interpret things to a degree like humans and assess value in a way similar to the way a human would assess it, and then give that a ranking weight. So it's fascinating stuff because Google has been talking about using machine learning in their algorithms for a long time, but it appears that they have actually incorporated a component actively into a ranking into their ranking system.
All right, I'm going to dive in because we're down a deep geeky rabbit hole now, Eric. So for everybody, what does this mean? What have we got to do as a business person? What does RankBrain mean, and what does the future of Google mean? What are they doing?
They did say that it's like the third most important ranking factor.
Okay, so what's the top 2?
So I'll tell you what Danny Sullivan said, and then I'll tell you what I said in an article that I gave a quote for yesterday. Danny's opinion was number 1 is links.
Okay.
Still.
Yep.
I agree. And then Danny phrased it as the number 2 thing being words on a page.
Yeah.
I more or less agree with that, but I'm phrasing it slightly different. And I'm going to say relevance.
I like the word relevance. I still think in terms of relevance. Is this the most relevant result to be delivering for this particular search query to this person at this time on this device? Do you know what I mean? That sort of thing. It's like, is it relevant? I like relevance.
Yeah. And you might argue that they should be reversed, and relevance should be number one, and then links number two, and that might be a better model. But in any case, this rank brain concept would be, to some degree, as I think about it, an enhancement to the concept of how you determine relevance and value. So there's a little bit of overlap with the intention of the way they currently determine relevance and the way they currently use links to determine importance.
Yeah.
So rank brain might be supplementing both those categories effectively.
Yeah.
And my guess is that when you look at those queries, as I've talked about, that Google's never seen before, that the value of the traditional systems is weakened. And that's the reason why the machine learning piece has a larger impact there.
So let's tie it back then to doing your best work, to creating a piece of content. And you said it the other week, which is be an expert or go home. You know,
Right.
but it's also being able to display that in the content you put out, because you can be an expert, but the world doesn't know unless you produce the content, largely, except for reputation, and you can have that, you know, those ripples there.
Unless you're living in the ecosystem and being a part of the ecosystem in the right way.
And having the conversations and you know, maybe being interviewed and so on, and that helps with the reputation build. So what do people need to do then? What's the first step? If they're listening to this and going, cranky Moses, I've got to get, you know, if you want to be getting search results in the future, what do people need to do?
So, yeah. So first of all, you know, like today, tomorrow, you know, the world didn't change overnight. And the influence of something like a rank brain is, it doesn't, you know, SEO didn't change fundamentally yesterday. Okay. The basic game, I shouldn't use the word game because I hate thinking there's a game, but the basic, you know, art and science of SEO is evolving. We didn't see some step function change. So I just want to reassure people about that. But you quite rightly brought the be an expert or go home thought thread in here, and the ecosystem thing that I've been talking about today. Those two things, you should be thinking that way anyway. But as Google moves more and more to a machine learning driven ranking system, which is going to take 5-10 years, you know. But as that becomes a bigger and bigger factor, you know, going up and to the right here, the signals that you've been depending on as the driving factors might be still in the mix. But if you're mechanically making sure you get links and you're not doing other things to show that you're an expert or one of the best in a given space, and that you deliver an enormous amount of value, if you're not doing all those things, then yeah, you could be in trouble, right? So it kind of goes back to what you and I were already talking about before. It's you gotta be showing that you have something to offer better in some way, either higher quality or cheaper. To me, better, best, or cheapest.
Yeah.
Two solid positions. In between, yeah, I don't know. By the way, for a local business, because I know we'll have some small businesses looking at this, you don't have to be the best pizza shop in, you know, on the globe, right? You probably need to be the best pizza shop within 5 miles.
Yeah.
Your customer base. So you got to put it all into the perspective of what I mean when I say these things, right? Yeah, I mean, I think the nature of the driving signals for search might be quite different in 5 years. And I do suspect, by the way, that even a machine learning algorithm will still use links as part of it. But there will be a lot more measurement of user behavior on your site and engagement with your content. And they'll get better at figuring those things out.
Like, for instance, how long a person spends on a page. Do they go to multiple pages? Do they even purchase, potentially, from a page if it's satisfied that need? All of that can be measured.
Yes.
Yeah. So a more, I'm going to use the word gestalt. More gestalt approach. Do you like that? Bit of German thrown in there. But that's what we got.
We have to get gestalt into this.
Yeah, there.
It wasn't a podcast till that's done.
It's not, exactly. I feel, and this was the first podcast, Eric. So thank you so much. So where can everyone find you?
So, well, at the moment I'm in Framingham, Massachusetts in my office, but that's a little too literal.
I don't think they're going to find it. Exactly. That's not.
The website is www.stonetemple.com. I'm on Twitter, @StoneTemple is my handle.
You had a bit of accompanying music to that then as well. Did you know that? That's like, you're on Twitter.
Telling me I have a meeting in 15
Yeah, I like that.
And then on Google Plus at Eric Enge. Those are easy places to find me. We'd love to converse with people in any of those places. So.
There we go. And thank you so much for your time. Thanks for being part of the ecosystem to which I belong as well. It's great.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
Lovely. Thanks. Cheers, chap.
Yep.
That, ladies and gentlemen, was the Google for Business podcast. I'm Martin Sherrington, and hope to see you next time. Well, it's a podcast, so you won't actually see me, but you'll hear me. Anyway, you know what I mean. See you then.